You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
He works on that, doesn't he?
I almost thought he said, this is the police.
The police. The police. Well, okay. Anyway,
the police.
The police.
The police.
How you doing, Taylor?
I'm well. How are you?
You got caught up in that traffic light? I did.
Oh my gosh! I thought I was going to be late.
Yeah, so did I. What we're talking about is on I-35 that the exit to 1187 is backed up to the highway. You know, and not because I'm coming up 35, and I see all these cars already stacked up.
Yeah.
And so, I'd go to Garden Acres, make a U-turn. But so if you're thinking about taking 1187, you might want to think of a different route.
Yeah, take a different direction.
Yeah, try another way of getting on there because it's not 1187 itself. It's that intersection between 1187 and the off-ramp. And it's a beating.
You know, I'm one of those people that follows my Garmin blindly, and my Garmin did me good today. It did re-navigate me. It took me, I come to this, I come to the local Legends Lab on a frequent basis, and it definitely took me a completely different route. And I did for a moment go, why is it taking me this way? But I was like, you know what? I'm going to trust the Garmin, and I'm so glad that I...
Trust the Garmin.
Trust the navigator. I guess Garmin's an old word, isn't it? The old school word.
I mean, know.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Aging myself.
Well, for most of y'all who... Oops, okay, I need to turn down my sound. Most of y'all recognize Lisa Schwarz here from Crazy Ministries. She's been part of the community for a long, long time, and also she has lots going on, and she's going to talk about what's going on in the in her world, dealing with the displaced, homeless, not misplaced, I guess is a bad word. Displaced is better. And she has some stats about Johnson County that I was going to ask her about, and she already knew. So
yeah, it's important to keep up on those things because we want to, you have your stats, you have what the government tells you, and then we have our realities as well.
What the government tells us, yeah. Yeah. Well, we can always trust what the government tells us.
Right.
Really, come on. Yeah.
Yes.
But, I was thinking last time you were here, you and Liz.
Yes.
You say she's at a chamber event right now?
She's at a chamber event. They're doing that safety training.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
For safety events, and so we decided that was the better place for her to go. So she's over there, and I think she preferred that as well. So,
well, she was like nervous on the show last time.
Yeah, she's a little. She does really well. She's done a lot, but it's not her favorite spot.
Yeah. Well,
so we're both very happy with the decision that we made today as to where we're at.
Well, last time you were here, we were talking about your big event, the City on a Hill, and the weather was going to be a concern, and you prayed right on the air that the rain would hold off, and boy, did it. And I'm thinking
it literally split.
Yes, and we had fine weather for your event. Yes. I'm thinking I'm going to take her to Vegas and have her pray over my cards.
I'm not sure
or whatever.
It works for stuff like that. I'm not sure.
I know, but it's like
there is that little clause in there that says "in accordance to my will."
Oh, yeah. It's always a loophole, but it just I thought. But that was amazing, and it was a great event.
It was a great event. We had we bumped from about 1,500 people in attendance to about 3,500 this
year.
Yes.
The parking lots were getting pretty full. And, yes. And I hope it continues to grow. It's become an institution in this community.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of people I know, a lot of people that have their own outreaches of certain types, and also you had some vendors, but they're all on board with your program.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're there to support, not just to turn a business. So anyway.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I hope that that continues, and you could probably have other things coming up because this is like nonprofit week. I talked to Debbie Beeman on Promises on Monday, and talked to Jessica Valley Reams on Tuesday about fitability. And I have Harvest House in a couple of weeks. And Shandy Stogsdill does, Re-Inspire.
Yes.
Yeah, she's on their board, and she'll be on in about 10 days. And so we'll talk real estate. We'll also talk about that.
Yeah.
Also. September 21st is National Giving Day, so I'm telling everybody to put
Texas
that on.
Giving Day, yes.
Yeah. So we're going to have this special show, and so Liz or you could need to put that on your calendar.
Okay.
Somebody named Turner Douglas Schwartz says, "Hey, I know these people."
Oh my goodness, that's my eldest.
Yeah. He
He
works
was just, he works for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my husband and I own Priest International. It's a floral wholesaling company. And so we wholesale everything except the flower, everything flower related, baskets, vases, ribbons, all those things. And Turner is, he runs it. I don't even know what his official title is.
Well, I bet he's still.
Sorry, Turner.
Yeah.
He's the big guy, though.
big
We are
guy,
just
huh?
the owners. He actually does all the work. So, and him and his team there. So he does a
Well,
phenomenal job.
Sure.
Great kid.
Well taught.
Yeah. And also, we're very excited that Cecily, his wife, is also coming on board to
That's
work
good.
for the company as well. So we're super excited about that. And I don't know if you remember Eric Hughes.
Yes.
So he also works for the company. So
Really.
yeah. And
Wow.
so Eric is like a second son to us. And so
Sure.
love it. And of course, for them, it's just a giant mission field. So they love it.
Well, I was going to say that I'm sure Turner's involved in some sort of ministry, even if it's on a lay basis.
Yeah. He actually serves on the board for Crazy 8 Ministries as well. And he's a very, very viable board member as well. He's not one who just sits, he serves.
That's well, he better. When they were starting to date, Cecily and Turner, it was so funny because, Turner, was very popular with the girls. Not that he was a playboy, but a lot of girls liked him because, to be frank, there's not a lot of guys like Turner in high
Right,
school that
right.
are mature enough and spiritually developed enough, and apparently, according to girls, a piece of eye candy. But Cecily's like, I can't believe Turner asked me on a date. It's like, and she was so
Yeah.
like, should I go? Should I, and all the girls in their class like, yes, you should go. It's so funny.
She's such a sweet girl. We love her. She was a beautiful addition to the family. And then, of course, little Sterling is
Little Sterling.
the best part of them both.
Well, before we get too far down in the family photo album, we
Yes.
need to, I got to tell the sponsors hello.
Okay.
Because they make this possible. CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. I had the new owners on a week ago Tuesday.
Okay.
And it's interesting. And it's going to be more or less the same outfit that people who have used that facilities, they're not going to radically change it, but they are going to be adding a few things like a bodybuilding program and things like that. So the two young ladies that own that were on the show. So if you want to check that out on their Facebook page and website, that'd be great. Also, thank you to Shandy. Like I mentioned, she'll be on the 27th, I believe. And she's doing my daughter's house sale. And I'm telling you, when you're involved in the sale of a house, it isn't like, here's a check. I mean, it's all this detail. So you need somebody like Shandy to do it. When I see these things, people are doing it by themselves,
Oh, my gosh.
I don't know how they do it.
No.
I don't care if you got, real estate for dummies right there or whatever you're using. I would want to do that, all the detail. So thank you, Shandy, for what you're doing for our family and for the community. Also, our place, of course. I was there a couple of days ago. I'm there about once a week. If I go there much more often, I'll be a piece of furniture there. But our place is a great place to do business and very supportive of our community events. So thank you, Otto. Thank you also to Wild Cigar and Culture. Chris is also very supportive of community events. He's concerned about it, the well-being of this town. He's a native of Burleson, graduate of Burleson. So there you are. But it's a great place to go for a smoke or a drink if that's your desired. It's the best place in town actually for both. It's got a very nice humidor and it's a nice place to go. You could take your mother to Wild and she'll be just fine. This ain't some roadhouse. So anyway, it's a nice place. Also, Tiffany Nico, she has the party in the pavilion coming up on the July 4th, and so check out locallifetx.com to get on the QR code to find out when, how, where, how much, that kind of thing. I've been there before. I went there 2 years ago, and it was really, really nice and had all these events. And a lot of little kids were there because it's a great place to watch the fireworks show, and it's a good place to spend your 4th. And so check that out. And also the latest magazine is out, and it's great advertisement. Also, thank you to Southern Jim. They are in the process today, finally starting to actually move stuff down. Now, they're not going to be open in that location for another week or two because of delays in this, but they're moving all the other stuff a little bit at a time. And so Southern Gym will be open before the end of the month at their bigger new location, right down on the first floor, right next to American Revelry. So it's going to be really, really nice. I've seen it, and it's.
Brad hasn't let me in there yet.
Well, it's dangerous for
Yes.
your husband and I.
Yes.
My wife will send me pictures when she works there. Oh, isn't this a beautiful
gosh.
ring? It's a beautiful bracelet. Like, Here, let me show you the mortgage. But no, that's not really that way. I mean, they got some pretty high end stuff, and they got some very affordable stuff. So I mean, they got it for all
Yeah.
levels of customers. Also, All Pro Roofing, John Williams will be out of my place tomorrow to check out the roofs. And we had that hailstorm. Over in the east side, we didn't get hit as hard apparently as they did in the west part of Burleson because they were showing pictures of baseball size. Ours like,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, ours are like ping pong size, but they left a few divots on my car.
Yeah, I mean, ping pong is significant. That's
Yeah.
a big size hail.
That's the biggest hail I've seen since I've lived there.
It's the biggest hail I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
And ours were maybe a little bit less than ping pong size.
yeah. I've been there since 1991, that same location, and I never seen it like that.
Oh my goodness.
And it didn't last a long time, but it was enough.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have him come check out the roof. And so if you want him to do it, call 817-734-2756. I'll say it again, 817-734-2756. They're located in Old Town, so these are local guys. I know that I've been reading on Facebook that the roofers swarming all over West Burleson. And I was just kind of tooling around town, and I was going through a residential area, and there's like sign after sign after sign of various roofing companies. So you don't want to let this one go by. Because my next sponsor will tell you why. Texas Farm Bureau with Melissa Harmon, 682-804-0534. She is very, very busy. Robin helps her out when she gets overwhelmed. And, and what I've heard from people sitting in your seat, from, clients of Texas Farm Bureau, they handle the claims appropriately, quickly, fairly. They don't try to find some way of getting out of it or, hose you down with all this business. They are very good for client customer service. I was at the networking meeting yesterday, and we were told that Texas Farm Bureau has been rated like the best customer service of all insurance companies. So 682-804-0534. And kind of another related is the Stop Restoration with Lisa and Morris Smith. They're also a member of my networking group. And if you had significant damage, and it allowed water into your home or into your attic or whatnot, they can handle those kind of water damages or fire-related damages. Or if you have a leaky water situation, like in a hot water heater, you don't even know it, they will make sure that, they can check it out. They're also certified mold specialists. Apparently, not everybody does that. A lot of people claim that, but not everybody is legitimate, but they're certified. Also, we have an event coming up Saturday night that I think is very, very good for the community, the Juneteenth Festival, 7:30 to 9 o'clock. It's, it's the first one. And I think it's great that we're, recognizing that Burleson has diversified over the years.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing. And so it's 7:30 to 9 p.m. at the Vera Calvin Plaza. And there's going to be food and vendors and art, music, like it says here. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the weather's supposed to be okay for it. It might be a little warm, but
if not, we can pray it out.
That's exactly right. Maybe you ought to take this on the road. It's, no, you'd be like.
We actually have a screenshot of the weather radar, and how it literally was like this big blob this way, and then it splits. It was absolutely phenomenal to watch.
Well, it's like, did your prayer really do that? Well, I think it had. I really honestly think that sometimes, that
if it wasn't, don't tell me.
Right. I mean, I think it really does. It's like, well, it's just a coincidence or whatever. Well, no, I really do think that God answers the prayers of people.
Absolutely.
And so I think that.
What would be the purpose of praying if he doesn't?
That's what I thought. I don't understand all the concepts of prayer. That's what, for me in the Christian experience, that's one of the most difficult things. Because you pray for certain things, but you also want to pray for God's will, and what if they're not in sync, and and on and on and on. But we're told to do it, so we do it.
Yeah,
and there you are. And that's about it. But but on your field of endeavor, so to speak, I've talked to Debbie Beeman, I've talked to Jennifer Woods over at Harvest House, and they're telling me that the need is much greater than ever before. And you're experiencing the same thing? We
are, absolutely. Our housing and our counseling services have gone up significantly.
Why do you think that is?
Gosh, I mean, I just think the state of our nation, for one, and people are crying out for help. Obviously, our economy is not in a good situation, so a lot of people can't afford just everyday living. Groceries have gone up. Gas. I mean, not any one of us have been unimpacted by the changes in our economy.
You're right.
And so I think that's the majority of it.
But what drives me crazy, and I don't want to get too political about it, but
Yeah.
when I read in the media, jobs are up and the economy's doing great and all this other stuff, I think it's all political hogwash.
Yeah, where are they living?
Yeah, it's like that's not the experience. I mean,
It's not what I'm experiencing when I order my groceries.
right, and I'm not experiencing. I went to the grocery store last week, and it's like, of course, prices are through the roof, but they're telling me that inflation is slowing. Well, okay, great, but it's already risen to a point.
Well, it needs some more than slow.
Yeah, but
I need more than that.
But I'm not trying to bring politics into
Sure,
what you're
sure.
doing, but I think there's a disconnect between what we're reading in the media and what we're experiencing here on the ground.
Yeah.
Because I keep hearing these things from y'all.
Yeah. And that's why I said, like kind of updating and looking at recent statistics, but then also taking a look at the realities of what we're experiencing. Sometimes are very different things. And tell people in business and relationships, the idea and the reality of things sometimes are very far apart. And so just kind of that's why it's good. And I appreciate you opening up your show to allow people like myself and Jennifer Woods and to really let them know, like, this is what's happening on the front lines. This is what we're experiencing on a daily basis.
Well, I'm the one that's blessed because I've said this many times. I sit in this seat and I talk to you and I talk to these other nonprofits, and I'm just overwhelmed almost by the generosity of our people in this community and how many services are available out there. I don't know if every community can brag about that. And so I'm the one that's getting the benefit of all this. But as far as what you're seeing, you talk about, what Jennifer and what Debbie are also saying is that we have a homeless problem here. Now, it's not as apparent because they're not living under the bridge like under
looks
Lancaster.
very different.
Yeah, but they're either in the car or sofa hopping or couch hopping kind of thing. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, and a lot of that goes back to having an understanding of the difference between suburban poverty, which took the lead in 2015 over urban poverty. And suburban poverty in the last decade has grown it by 64%.
Good grief.
Urban poverty in the last decade has grown by 29%.
Well, so
that gives you the trajectory there. And I think a lot of it is because you still have a lot of your funding and your government resources, your social services that go to your urban areas. If there's a choice to send housing dollars to Johnson County or Tarrant County.
See what it did again. Just let me know that if you hear this, it's
his blood sugar. I'm like, what's that mean? Do I need to start?
No, it just means it's telling me I don't have a signal, but it goes offline every couple of hours. And, back to what you're saying.
So I think a lot of it comes back to, first of all, it is kind of the facade. People are unable to shift their mindset from poverty looking like Lancaster, for lack of a better term. Like we all have an understanding of what that looks like. And so we assume that's where the greatest hotspot of poverty is, but it's actually not. Suburban poverty did take the lead in 2015. A lot of that is due to the housing crisis in 2011. But since then has continued to on pace outnumber urban poverty. And some of that is because we don't have the social services to keep up with the need in the suburban area like you'll find in the urban areas. So a very practical example is, where can I go in Johnson County to find affordable childcare? Do we have any affordable childcare daycares that operate on a sliding scale or have some kind of babysitting vouchers? You're not going to find that in Johnson County, even though that's in the top 4 poverty barriers is lack of affordable and accessible childcare. Public transportation is another example. Of course, we have the Cletran. It's not free. It's not super cheap either. It's cheap. I mean, it's available, and they do partner with us, and we can get vouchers for our residents as long as they're using it for schooling or education. But it's I mean, again, I don't want to, because Cletran's doing the best they can do with what they have, right? But they're not available at all times. Their schedule's a little bit particular, and so it's not the end-all be-all. And so when you take a look at, again, in that top 3 or 4 poverty barriers, lack of affordable and transportation is ranked up there in that top 3 or 4. And so we don't have the funding in Johnson County like you would find in Dallas or Arlington or Fort Worth, to be able to create those social services that are need to attack some of these really
Mm.
difficult barriers that people are trying to overcome poverty.
And we look at Burleson and we see all these things going on. We're booming. Business is doing well, or hopefully well for a lot of people. Houses popping up everywhere, but there's a lot of people that are left behind in this thing.
100%, 100%. And I wanted to read to you because I wanted to take a look at, in Johnson County, the average 2-bedroom apartment in 2023 is somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment.
And it's in Johnson County. I bet it's higher in Burleson.
So yes, so John, that's why I put the wide range. I didn't want to call out particular cities. A 3-bedroom is anywhere from $1,400 to $2,100. And of course, that depends on where you're at. When you take a look at in 2023, the FPL, which is your federal poverty level, for a family of 4 is $30,000. Okay, so if we do the math on that, that's $2,500 a month. That's $575 a week, which pretty much requires me to have a 40-hour-a-week job that's paying me at least $15 an hour in order to make what they say is that $30,000. But in when you do that math on what the average housing costs, you're left with nothing.
Well, right.
Especially if you're a single mom, with 2 or 3 kids, which is very common. And you don't have that double income coming in. But the challenge is this federal poverty level, to me, $30,000 is way below the actual, all right? So it's kind of like when you take a look at your budget and it's like the reality, the actuals versus what you budgeted, right? So they've kind of set this number, but when you take a look at the actual need for somebody to really live on their own, it's more than $30,000 a year. That's a no-brainer.
Right.
And that, the poverty level, the FPL, it kind of goes up a little bit every year because nobody wants to be the president who's like, hey, I actually moved the poverty level to where it should be and poverty went up.
Yeah, right.
By X percent while I was in the presidency. But, and so that's part of the challenge is how do we move the social services, the poverty level to where it's an actual, and then there's a gazillion reasons, a gazillion barriers, and I think when you take a look at research, collaborations with local social services is one of the number one ways to really attack poverty, which is where I think our social services do well in Johnson County. And I think some of that is because we are smaller and there are fewer numbers of us, and we really ally together and we work together to really help a family in need because they're going to need housing. They need that mental, emotional support, which is where our free counseling services come through. The number one poverty barrier is mental, emotional, spiritual instability.
Yeah. Do you work with public institutions in the county or the city?
Yeah.
Is there any problems with y'all are private, y'all are faith-based versus
So it depends on the school district, and I won't call out any particular school districts, but some are a little bit friendlier with us than others. But what we do is we have for lack of a better term, a covenant that a parent will sign saying that they understand that Crazy 8 Ministries has no affiliation with that particular school district. But most parents are like, oh, a counselor can come onto the school campus and I don't have to give my kid a ride and it's free. Yes, absolutely. Sign me up. So there's little to no work or effort for the parent for their child to get the help that they need. So we do partner with school districts like that. We partner with CPS a lot with housing and also those counseling needs, those parenting classes, those kinds of things. So last year we had 11 reunifications. So that means we had moms that moved in who we partnered with CPS to reunify them with their kids, which is a huge number. And we love that. We love working with CPS and partnering with them and cultivating. We're kind of like a fishbowl. When a family moves into our campus, they're living with other families. And so they essentially become a fishbowl. And so they will tell us, the other families will tell us, hey, she, slapped her kid across the face or whatever. That very rarely happens. But it's kind of like the way our housing is set up kind of does a lot of work for CPS. They know we're doing inspections every week, and we're going to be checking for the things that CPS would check for as far as hygiene, safety, those kinds of things. So CPS likes working with us because we do a lot of work for them. And so we love that. And also CPS does a lot of work for us. So, people, for example, people who have an open CPS case, they automatically qualify for CCMS, which is that child care help that we're looking for, those kinds of things. So,
well, I would imagine even if it's a public institution like CPS, you're dealing with people that are very sympathetic, if not faith-based themselves.
yes.
And that makes it easier. But that's Texas.
Yeah, and they have an understanding of the mentality of the people that we're dealing with. Very, I'll say broken. I mean, where it's just kind of, and discouraged. Actually, that's a better word. Broken sounds very negative. Very discouraged mentality, hopeless mentality. And so to really come up against what we would call that a spirit, like to come up against that spirit of hopelessness and overcome that, to help somebody to reignite a vision in their life, to reignite a dream, and give them some sense of hope that you can dig out of this hole.
Well, I'm glad that y'all have that kind of relationship, because I read all the time about, particularly in the Midwest and Northeast, a lot of these faith-based groups are under attack by government institutions, and here, in at least this area of Texas, it's a lot more cooperative, and I think y'all see the bigger picture.
Yes.
And
we have a great relationship with, I feel like all of our city leaderships in Johnson County. I feel like they have a lot of respect for what we do. We certainly have a lot of respect for what they do. And I think we have found our lanes and how we partner well together, and the necessity of both.
Well, I've talked to several members of the city council over the last couple of years, the mayor included, and they all, to a person, love what you do.
Yeah.
And if there are ways they can help, they without having to violate certain boundaries, they want to do it. And so,
and I can tell you that we get quite a bit of personal funding from a lot of city leaderships, people in leadership. So that says a lot as well, that they're willing to put, invest in the mission as well, and they see the necessity of it.
But I see about what you were talking about earlier about how the poverty level in the cities is 29%. Now here in suburbs, it's grown
64% in the last decade,
and it's grown 29 cities. I think a lot of that has to do with all the gentrification that goes on in some of the urban areas. I mean, you see what's happening in downtown Fort Worth area, and it's like they're almost pushing it out, right? And that South Main project they got going on in Fort Worth.
Yes.
And, because I remember when Rosedale used to be, you don't go to Rosedale. And now it's got all these upscale apartments and other businesses.
Yes. So it is actually one of the number one reasons. So when I talked about there's lots of reasons for that increase in that growth, that is one of them, is that urban people, a lot of governments have gone in and have rehabilitated local downtowns, urban areas, and have pushed people in poverty out, and it has forced them into the suburban areas around there.
Yeah, it's about the only place they can afford to live. And, and what happened with us in Burleson, Burleson, when I came here, was fairly a middle-class town. I mean, you had, a couple of doctors and lawyers and some in the upper end, but as that push out is extended into Everman and Crowley, a lot of people that could have moved out from Everman and Crowley into where we're at. And the Grandview people say the same thing about Burleson, and it's like they're getting pushed further and further out. And I'm sure that makes the transportation issue even worse.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Burleson will ever come to the point would have to have public transportation, like a bus line or something like that, but it could, it may have something like that, or something that maybe between various communities. But that'd be a ways off, because it takes a long time to work through that.
I think some of the challenges, not to interrupt you, I think some of the challenges that we see with governmental resources in general is they provide the resource without support or relationship. Which is, I understand the attempt there. So, for example, when you just provide housing dollars or childcare dollars or that free transportation without that parameter of, hey, we want to also provide for you. We want to hear from you, like so let's say, for example, if we do some sort of transportation, is there a progressive, we start you out for free, we need evidence that you're going to work, that you're using this not to go mess around, but you're using it to actually pursue work. You're using it. But all of that requires work and money then too, to manage those dollars. Perfect case scenario is that we put some sort of a 8 to 10 year progressive governmental poverty program together that actually measures their performance and their progress over 8 to 10 years to break that cycle.
When you say progressive, there are a lot of people that red flag is politics, right? And that's what drives me crazy about these conversations.
But look, I does not not how I meant it. I'm talking about like
exactly.
just kind of this, where it's just this measurable progress.
Well, no, exactly. But that's the whole thing. And if I want to get into some of my answers about it, I'd be taken as political as well.
Right.
But so that may be something for another show. But but that's the problem I think with a lot of the government funding is that we're so polarized, particularly at the national level, that if they want it, it must be wrong because they want it. And it's like, this is so dumb. It's stupid. People are really in need. And we got two camps up there that are trying to, score points against each other, and we're caught in the middle. And I think the state of Texas is getting that way too. In fact, this is segue in. Next week, I have a couple of guests. We're going to talk about what's going on at the state level, and we'll be bringing these things up. And it's like, and then even when we get the money, what's the first thing you do when there's funding for X? Well, we need to hire a bureaucracy to manage it, and so
oh my gosh,
it's like it's frustrating because of the political input that these things it's demanded of, and I'm sure you and I've talked to other people that are in your field, and they say the same thing. It's like we need money. We don't need a lot of other stuff to come with it.
Right. We don't really want to be money with strings and micromanaged. And I understand the responsibility that people have when you're giving money, but measure your outcome. I mean, you can look at a Jennifer Woods, you can look at a Crazy 8 Ministries, you can look at a Harvest, you can look at the promises and be like, hey, just send us your statistics at the end of the year, or send us a few testimonies and those kinds of things. And so to me, measuring activity is not necessarily the same as measuring outcome. And so I think there are better ways other than bogging us down with all of these regulations. Like at the end of the year, let me show you the proof.
Right.
In the people.
Well, I think the testimonies would be very powerful.
100%.
Because I've talked to people over the last few years, even before I started doing a podcast, they would say, promises, Harvest House, Crazy 8 made a big difference in my life. And then when I started doing the podcast, I got to see it much more up close and personal. It's amazing.
And I mean, it's crazy. Like I honestly, I could come here and throw out whatever numbers I wanted and tell everybody whatever I wanted about what Crazy 8 Ministries is doing. But when I come in here and I do a podcast with a resident and you hear their story and you hear the daily operations of what they're experiencing and the provisions that Crazy 8 is able to offer them and the impact and the change that has made in their life, that speaks more than numbers to me. And so I tell people all the time, the proof is in the people. It's not in the numbers. The proof is in the people.
Well, that's true. And I just have to think that when all is said and done and you're on, at your reward, as we say,
yes,
you're just going to people you encounter at that level. Yeah. They're there because of you. That's got to be very humbling, if anything else.
Yeah.
And so, but it really does. I think the community really does need to know, and I keep shouting it, that they need to know there are a lot of people sleeping in their cars here. Yeah. There's a lot of people sleeping on friends' sofas for 2 or 3 days and then go to another friend's sofa for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. So let me speak into that. I know I just said against numbers, but I'm going to give you some numbers.
Give me some numbers.
So we are housing about 59 residents. About 32 of those are under the age of 18. Those adults do compile men, women, and children. So we do house men as well. Right now, our men that are there actually come with their wives. So we do have complete family units as well that are living with us. And we're working with both. And look, these are family units where both mom and dad are working. But because of history or what have you, a lot of their income is garnished. Or they have felonies in their background, or they have eviction. And so eviction really prevents them from finding a place to live. You kind of get like the scarlet letter if you have an eviction in your past. And so it's like, where do you go to live? And also, interestingly enough, if you have a felony or an eviction, you cannot even apply for housing.
Right.
You can't even apply for housing.
Do you think, this is kind of off the topic a little bit, but do you think that the felony, and of course there's serious felonies but that may be excluded from this conversation, but certain types of felonies, they're preventing people from getting jobs that are otherwise, preventing their rehabilitation. I'm not saying we need to put like a mass murder or something like that in your grocery store, but there are felonies that are nonviolent.
Well, I think that goes back to that relationship versus rules. Like, are you willing to meet with somebody, build a relationship with them, get to know them, and go, okay, I know you have a felony, but I've built a relationship with you, and I believe you are rehabilitated, or you're worth rehabilitating. Those kinds of things. It's interesting to me that if you filed for bankruptcy at that 7-year mark, it goes away. But if you're a felon for life.
Right. And
like where's the consistency in that? And I understand too. And part of that issue is a felony is such this broad covering.
Right.
So it could be, like you said, it could be a murderer that's put in the same category with somebody who,
I don't know, DUI maybe.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or
was in a car where somebody else had drugs.
Yeah, right.
That could end up being a felony charge. I'm not an expert in that field, but I know what I'm experiencing. And some of the felonies that some of our residents have, I'm like, wait, what?
Well, that really is a problem. They say, well, I don't want, somebody who is, some violent criminal working for me. We're not talking a violent criminal. That's a different category. And I understand that completely. But as far as like these other, particularly those that are committed when you're like 19 and stupid, which is almost redundant phrase.
So, let me give you an example. So we have a resident who's living with us, and she's actually she's on her 4th year because she has a felony. She can't, and she has 2 children. We're like, ugh, where do we just put her out on the street? She has legitimately, we can see, measurable things that she has turned in that has showed that she has actively pursued housing. She actually does work full-time, makes probably $13, $14 an hour. Nonetheless, she does have a full-time job, but she is unable to find not only affordable housing, but somebody who's willing to house her because she has a felony, and her felony was originally abuse to the elderly. Now, when you sit down and you ask her story, she was a CNA, and it was a subjective report that was made from the families who felt like their loved one was neglected by her. And so she was, and again, I wasn't there. I don't know. I didn't know her 7 years ago, but nonetheless, that has followed her. According to her, she was like, I think I could have done better, but I didn't abuse this person. I was young. She was 20 at the time. I was young. When I look back as an adult, as a 27, 28-year-old, I'm like, yep, I think I could have paid more attention, but I didn't hurt this person, abuse this person, physically hurt this person. So again, I'm not here to say whether it was right or wrong. What I am here to say is that felony has followed her and has kept her from moving forward, and also her children. So her children, so then we're stuck going like, okay, we have this waiting list, and you've been with us for 4 years, and it's time for you to move on. And look, she pays $600 a month to stay, and we don't charge very, very many people at all. Like the whole first year is completely free, and then it's kind of progressive. It's on this sliding scale based on their income. She has income, and she's like, so her time again was up in June, and she was like, Miss Lisa, if I start paying $600 a month, can I please stay? I don't know where my kids are going to go. I don't know, that's hard to respond. And we love her. Yeah. She's not a problem. She doesn't cause any issues. In some regards, she's been with us so long, she's a little bit of a watchman in the home that she's in. And so it's like, where do we send her? She doesn't qualify for hardly any of your housing services, and where she's got 2 kids.
Because of the felony?
Because of the felony, and because, and some of it's because her income is slightly high enough. She falls in that $31,000 to $32,000 range. So she can't afford a $1,900 a month apartment. But even if she could, nobody's going to rent to her because she has a felony on her. So she's stuck in this catch-22. Super sweet girl. Super sweet girl. Well,
I think the solution is I need to be governor. No, that ain't going to work.
My goodness.
I know. Wouldn't that be great?
We hear from Taylor.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, it really does drive me crazy, though, because I bet you're also fighting against the stigma of these people that are homeless. It's like, well, they're drug addicts, or they're drunks, or they deserve it, or they're too lazy to work, or blah, blah, blah. In fact,
I can tell you only about 36% of our current residents are former addicts. The rest were... And the rest were just came into some kind of a weird circumstance, had a situation like they have a felony in their background, potentially were abused as children, moved out when they were 17, have just kind of been wanderers for several years and are looking for a safe place where they can stay and not just live, but they can rehabilitate themselves.
Right.
They have time to go. And that's the beautiful thing about Crazy 8 Ministries is we're not providing housing. We're providing housing security. And we're telling them, look, if you look over the next 2 to 3 years, if we removed the barrier of a water bill, electric bill, housing bill, if we remove the barrier of helping you with transportation, childcare, those kinds of things, and the sky were the limit, what would you want to do? And honestly, I don't have a percentage in my head, but a large amount of our residents will respond by saying, I'd really like to go back to school and do X.
Yeah. I've actually had a couple.
They do have dreams.
I've had a couple people, not many, but at Hill, I've had a couple of people that I found out in the aftermath or like towards the end of the semester that they basically been homeless. I mean, they had a place to live temporarily and then they had to move to another place temporarily.
Yes.
And that kind of thing. But, I mean, that's not very common, but it has happened. And it just, I don't think that people realize that sometimes, but lest people think that aren't familiar with your ministries, it's not just a crash pad you're providing.
No,
What else? You do provide rehabilitation and counseling.
Yeah, so they're actually required to meet with a counselor and a case manager every week. And so that's one of the requirements that they have so that we make sure so they're setting monthly goals and then that case manager's coming alongside them and really helping them hit those goals. The case manager's there to advocate for them and saying like, hey, they really did work hard towards this goal. They weren't unable to hit it. But at the end of every month, they actually get a score based on, so if they set 100 goals worth 100 points and they hit 90 goals, they get a 90%, right? So at the end of that first semester, which is 6 months, ideally they need to be at 80% or above to qualify for the second semester. So it is a measurable, progressive program.
Yeah, in the right sense of the word.
Yes, in the right sense of the word. So we're trying to move them from a state of barely surviving to a state of thriving. And so that's where the case management comes in and is so valuable. And then, of course, taking a look at that number one poverty barriers, like I can give you all the resources and we can make all the right decisions. But if mentally and emotionally and relationally you haven't learned how to come into the confidence and who you're called to be, make good decisions for you, your children, set healthy boundaries with your broken system that you're coming out of, you're going to go right back into that state of poverty because that's all they know. And so that's where that counseling comes in so crucially in really teaching them their identity in Christ, helping them tap into who they're called to be, the power that they have to walk into, understanding the bigness of their capacity, helping them dream again, discover their possibilities, and just giving them that opportunity to see visions for themselves and for their children. And it's amazing. When I go into the school district, of course, I can't use the name of Jesus. So I tell them like Crazy 8 Ministries is a place where we help people's dreams come true.
You can't. The schools won't let you even say the word Jesus.
We're pretty, we try and keep it pretty vanilla. We don't want to offend anybody because we don't want to lose our invite.
Well, I guess so. Well,
so I try and just, and also I don't, we're working with 5th graders, 6th graders. And so we don't know what they're going to go home and say to their parents. We don't want the school district to get in trouble. So we try and keep it kind of vanilla and just say like, we're a place where we help people's dreams come true.
Well, as far as the founding of this institution, how long has it been in operation?
So 2011.
Okay. And what brought you to this point, in 2011 and said, I need to do something?
So we originally were a discipleship counseling ministry. That was my passion, was to come alongside people and really help them become the best you. And what I started discovering was there were some people who couldn't get past their actual circumstances to even consider what is my best me. Right now, I just need to survive my rent. Right now, I just need to get a job. Right now, I need to, I'm working towards not being evicted. And so there were so many people that were coming to us for counseling that needed more than counseling. They actually needed circumstantial help. And so in my mind, I was like, from the life coaching perspective, so I'm a certified life coach, I was like, man, there's just so many ways to come alongside people from a wholeness perspective through the power of Jesus and really design a program that, again, kind of progressively moves them through these poverty barriers. And so I wrote what's called the ISP. We call it the ISP. It's the Individual Spiritualized Plan. Okay. And it's all online. We built it on, and we've developed it into a portal over the years where you enter in their goals, it assigns a point value, and then it measures their progress moving through.
What it sounds like to me is that back in 2011, you said, yes, Lord.
Yes.
And Lord said, wait till you see what I got coming for you.
Yeah, and thank goodness I didn't know. If I had had any idea then that we would be 5 campuses big, we're 5 campuses big, or I was going to tell you this number earlier, and we sidetracked, but we've had over 300 people apply for housing in 2023. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the housing need in Johnson County. And those are people from Johnson County.
Well, here's something I've asked Jennifer and Debbie and other people that are involved in this. Megan was swearing over at Next Step and all that. How do you not take this home at night?
I don't know that we don't.
Nah, that's what I'm saying. How do you not, because as a teacher, most days are fine, but there is a couple of days here and there.
Yeah.
Like it affected my evening, so to speak, my mental outlook for the evening.
It is really hard. We have we have a couple people graduating in June or in July. So we are in the process of going back through that waiting list and screening people, calling them, are you still interested, and setting up for next Thursday, just a day of interviewing. And I'm already regretting that day because I know that people will come in and they'll tell us their stories. And we want to house them all, and we only have 2 openings. And that is difficult. And like all of us are already like, ugh, worst day of our life, because they're on the waiting list, and then you kind of instill a little bit of hope by saying, we want to interview you. But out of the 7 people we interview, we only have room for 2. And
so
and
they
that's
know
hard.
that coming in, though. They know that they're one of, there are 2 slots, 7 people.
Yes.
So they know
we tell
that.
them up front,
good.
like, we have 2 openings coming. We're going to be honest with you. We're just packing the day with as many. Are you still interested? This is no guarantee. So we tell them that up front. But to read about them on an application is different to sit across the table with them and hear their story for 45 minutes. And then potentially at the end of that go, we're sorry you're not a good fit for our program, or we're sorry we can only pick 2 out of the 7 of you. And so that's hard. It's really hard because it's not what we do. It goes against what we do.
Well, obviously, if you had more facilities, you'd have more yeses.
Yes.
But I've asked, like I said, your peers in this field, and and they have coping mechanisms, and and prayer helps, and and all this that we hope they don't have to live with this, but sometimes it gets through, and they think, gosh, I wish I could help more people. Yeah. But it just can't. And,
you can't. You have to know where your boundary is, and there's a housing capacity. There's also the ministry capacity. Like, what can we? How many? So if somebody came alongside tomorrow and said, "Hey, we want to donate this entire facility. You can house more people." I still have a problem. I still have to hire somebody to manage that. I still need the income, and I will tell you in complete transparency, my highest paid employee makes $27,000 a year.
Yeah, nobody's going to get rich doing this.
So you do it because you love it,
right?
And so and that's only one. The rest are well under that.
Oh, sure. I mean, and that does kind of probably limit the employee pool, so to speak. But
100%.
But what I've been told also is that people are generous with your organizations. That's just the first step, because like you just described, somebody, here's a whole building for you, put 30 families in it. Well, golly, okay.
We got to case manage them. We got to pay for them. We got to pay for their water bill. I've got a facilities manager that now has to manage that facility. And chances are, if they're donating a building, it's not sparkling, crackling clean. It's got problems.
You ever see that movie, The Bells of St. Mary's?
I have not.
It's a Bing Crosby movie from the war, Ingrid Bergman. And, she convinces some guy to turn over his whole factory over into a new school for wayward youths. And I'm like, if only, right?
Yes.
It doesn't work like that. But anyway, I just dated myself because I like these older movies. But that's the real need of it. Is not just the one-time gift is great. Yeah. And surely you'll take it, but it has to be an ongoing thing. So how do people help you ongoing?
I think one of the things that we're always looking for is people who are interested in getting certified in biblical counseling. So right now we actually have a waiting list for our counseling services because we've had such an influx of people applying for counseling.
And this isn't just somebody that means well. They need to have training in this, right?
Yes. So we do the training. They would enter our certification program. It's anywhere from an 8 to 12-month program where you would take online. We have monthly trainings, like continuing education that we do with our existing counselors. And then you would be required to have so many supervisory observation hours, those kinds of things as well. So yeah, no, we highly, which is what part of why it's difficult. We've had people that start the program and only about 25% finish the program because it's hard. You know, it's a hard program. And I think people think, oh, this is just a nonprofit down the street. This is going to be mamsy-pamsy, gumdrops and unicorns, and we'll just get our certification, and I'll say I did my deed to society, and then they start the program. They're like, wait a minute, this is intense.
Well, that's what Promises has. They have counseling, and it's faith-based, but, you know, they talk about psychological issues as well. And they're trainers, they're not trainers, they're counselors. They're certified by the state.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I've told this to my audience before, but a few years ago, I used Promises. And I could bring as much of the gospel in as I wanted, which I did some. Yeah. But I was also talking about other things. But, you know, so a lot of people think about, you know, Christian-based counseling. It's like, we need to pray better. Here.
I wish it were that easy.
You know, memorize these verses. No, it isn't that easy.
No.
It's the gospel is helps, but you need to have the full type of counseling.
You know, I think so. The scripture talks about working out your salvation, and we live in a society that doesn't even like to work out in the gym, much less work out their identity, and it does require work. It's exactly what it says it is. It's a working out. It's a training yourself towards righteousness. So it's not. So yes, even the clients who come in, they leave every week with 3 assignments. Our counselors are trained that they give a spiritual assignment, a physical assignment, and then a soul assignment to attack the body, the soul, and the spirit.
Right. I've talked to a couple of people going to Promises and said, well, I don't go to church, and I'm not sure, what my faith is. I believe in God, but I don't really have active faith or whatever. I said, you don't have to have that.
That's correct.
That's not a requirement. They're not going to give you a Bible test when you walk in the door.
That is correct.
Obviously you're a heathen, so there's the door.
Yep.
And it said, well, I don't want to go in there and get hammered with the Bible. I want to, if I want to talk about my problems, I want to talk about them, but not say, well, it says in Leviticus here. They didn't.
No.
And that's not what happens at Promises or your place either.
It's also not relevant. It's not helpful.
No, it isn't. It turns you off.
It's not even helpful as a believer. Don't point me to the book of Leviticus if I'm struggling, or tell me I just need to have more faith. That's not helpful.
No, or there's something you've done that deserves this.
Right.
Life, bad things happen to everybody, good, bad, and different. And so I think that one of the things I'd like to promote to the community is that, okay, your faith, is important to us, but it's not a prerequisite to access these facilities. If you go get food from Harvest House, if you go get help from Next Step Women's Center, Megan and Summer have made it very clear that they're there for you if you want to bring in the spirituality, but if that's not what you're there for, they're not going to force it on you. And I think some people who are either willfully ignorant of that think that's what it's just a means of dragging in and pounding you down with the scripture. And I resent that actually because it's so untrue.
Well, and part of our challenge, again, not to get too political, but to take a look at it from a governmental perspective, is we live in a world where we tell people what to believe. And we fear letting people discover what they believe for themselves. And I think that's the beauty of what all of us do is we give people room to discover what is your passion, what is your dream, what are things that you want to change in your life, what are you happy with, what are you not happy with. I like to use the verbiage a lot with teenagers, like, who do you want to be? What's the perfectly you look like? And hearing their answer is so fascinating to me because it's going to look different than you and it's going to look different than me. And trust the Holy Spirit in people's lives. And because the Bible says that it's only by the Spirit of the Lord that a man is drawn unto Christ. So there's nothing I can say to draw somebody to Christ. That's not my job.
Yeah, I have a couple of family members I wish would be a bit more devout, you might say, but
it's not your job.
I'm not going to persuade them with great rhetoric.
No. You can live a life that makes them jealous and they want something. They have a little bit of looking at you and going, man, I envy your ability to walk in peace in the midst of this.
Some days are better than others.
I was just speaking that over you, Mr. Allard.
Thank you. Well, I could use it, honestly. We got things going on like everybody else does, and they're happening. But if people want to donate, obviously there's donate function on your website, right? I've been told by other groups that they all appreciate monthly donations, even if it's not even if it's, the
Yes.
widow's mites.
Yes. We obviously will take that $5,000 donation, but we love when somebody's like, I'm going to give $25 a month. I'm just going to commit to that. And here's the reason, just like business, right? You're always looking for a way to create cash flow because it helps you project better. So let's go back to that example. If somebody gave me a building tomorrow, I need to be able to take a look at, the bank's going to want me to look. If I want to buy a piece of property, the bank is legitimately going to look at like, what's your regular income? And the people who commit to $25 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, that helps us so much in projecting and making wise decisions. And obviously, we always invite in the Holy Spirit. We want to make decisions that are slightly delusional. I'm known for, like, from in the coaching world, I say there are comfort zones, there are comfort goals, there are discomfort goals, and then there are delusional goals.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you as a human, we want to kind of fall in the discomfort goal because that's how we increase our capacity. When we add the Holy Spirit, we want to come somewhere between discomfort and delusional, but not delusional. And so that monthly amount is so helpful to us in helping to project what do our services look like for 2024. And we're already starting to have that conversation. We have that new building, that connections building. We want to offer more services out of there, but I have to be able to manage it and minister, and do it well. You can't just open up your building and go, we're open every day from 11 to 1 for open prayer time to our community, which is what I want to do. I have to have somebody to manage that time frame.
Right.
So that means either somebody needs to volunteer their time or I need to come up with funding to pay somebody to be there.
Yeah.
And volunteers are great, but they're also very fickle.
Yes,
they're very
that too.
finicky.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they're more work than they're worth. And I say that in complete transparency as well. The service projects are great when they work.
Right.
But most service projects want to come on a Saturday, and at noon, they're done, whether they're finished with their project or not. And so they leave projects half undone sometimes. And you got to have 2 employees there on a Saturday after they've been working out to help manage. And, and you don't want to seem ungrateful and unthankful, but it's like, this is so exhausting,
Yes,
So it's a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of reward as well. The difference, I think, with a nonprofit and a business, and, my husband and I own several businesses, is a nonprofit, you really have to press into the Holy Spirit in your closet to find your reward.
And some days it's harder than others, like I mentioned before.
Yes.
Well, we're about done.
Okay.
It just flew right by. I could talk for another hour, but you also got a podcast in an hour, don't you?
I do, with Zach Rippey at 1 o'clock.
Okay, and so you want to tune into that. Take the last word.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having us here, and it says a lot about how much you care about our community. I love the information you put out there. So thank you for what you do for our community and just
I'm blessed
getting information out there.
Well, this will be out on Apple and Spotify within the next 24 hours, and it's already on YouTube and Facebook. And when I get home in about a half hour from now, I'm going to, I'll post it and promote it and all this other stuff. And there's going to be a lot of people. I think a lot of people really like these shows because it tells them something good about their community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes they pick up the news and it's like, I don't feel like engaging today. Thank you, Taylor.
Always.
Try to stay out of trouble. Good luck getting home.
I'll do my best.
Alrighty. Next week, I have a couple of guests. So Victoria Johnson's one of them. And on Monday, we're going to have Catherine Redding, we're not going to talk local politics. We're done with that for a little while. But she's been interning, and she's studying the state of Texas politics. And we're going to talk about what's going on at the legislative level. And then Victoria's going to talk about what's going on at the local level. And Thursday, I have an open date, so I may end up ranting and raving about something then. So we'll see. We'll see y'all next week.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.